Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for everything public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local governments.
It was a good learning experience for a lot of us that social media is not real life.
But we have to remember the media are very rarely a target audience. They're simply that conduit.
Our words have impacts on individuals, and it may not be positive. So just being thoughtful and mindful of the words that we speak.
I think what's so interesting about this position too, and this job and this profession, is that every one of us is looking for purpose, and when we find it here, that's it.
To know is that a crisis for one is not necessarily a crisis for another.
Hello everyone, hope you're enjoying our content. If you would be so kind and click the link at the bottom of today's episode notes, your support in any amount will keep the podcast going. Whatever you can provide will keep the lights on and the podcast growing. So sit back and enjoy today's episode.
Good morning. Today on the show, we have Maren McKay, Public Affairs and Communications Manager for the Lynnwood Police Department in Lynwood, Washington. Welcome to the show, Maren.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's talk about your background. So I want to hear about your background and how you came to the Lynwood Police Department.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start at the beginning. I was a psychology major in college. I wanted to be a psychiatrist until I learned that I had to go to medical school. And then I was like, I don't think I want to be a psychiatrist anymore because that's going to be a lot of time and a lot of schooling and a lot of debt. So I have always had an interest in news and that kind of thing. And so I started out as a reporter and an anchor in a bureau in Northwest Montana. So a bureau basically just means I wasn't in a newsroom. I was a team of one, kind of working on my own, covering from basically like Whitefish, Missoula area all the way up to the Canadian border by myself. So it was a lot of learning on the fly, but I had a lot of fun for about 3.5 years. I got to do a lot of really cool stories. I got to hike to glaciers and do really cool things that you can do in Montana as a reporter. After I was a reporter, I transitioned into doing the PR and marketing side. I was the public relations manager at Whitefish Mountain Resort for about a year. And the best thing about that job was I got to snowboard every day during the winter, and I got to hike in the summer and pick huckleberries. So yeah, it was a really cool job. And then my husband and I moved to the Seattle area, and I was the public relations manager for the Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass. And that was really cool. I got to do a lot of really kind of unique things that I don't think a lot of other people get to do. It was because it's a very notable landmark in Seattle. We got a lot of media requests. So doing a lot of like high profile media requests was really, really fun. I got to do things with Love is Blind. I got to do a new show with Gordon Ramsay. And so getting to kind of get my feet wet with that was in a bigger market in Seattle was a lot of fun. And then I ended up in my current job here at the Lynnwood Police Department, and I've been here almost 2 years as their PIO.
Awesome.
So that's been kind of my journey.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, so for those of you that do not know where Lynwood's located, can you give me an idea where it's located, and then we'll talk about some other numbers?
Yes. So Lynwood is a city of about 45,000 people. It's located in Snohomish County, and it's give or take about 30-ish minutes, I believe, north of Seattle. And so when I say I work in Seattle as a PIO, I'm always like, I work outside of like the downtown of Seattle.
Right. My son was stationed in Everett, Washington, with the Coast Guard for about a year, and we were up there a couple times. And I have a friend that lives in Seattle, and then I interviewed for the Auburn Police Department for their PIO job many years ago. Yeah. So I'm familiar with the area. So let's talk about personnel. How many sworn personnel, how many civilian staff members do you have on?
So fully staffed on the road, we should have about 80-ish, give or take. Everybody else is not, let me try that again. fully staffed. We have about 80 people on the road for officers. We're a little under that right now, but we're actually slowly getting there, which is exciting. We have a ton of new people coming on and a ton of new people going through the academy, which is really exciting. Top down, outside of that, I think maybe around a little over 100. So we're not a huge agency, but we're not tiny either. It's just kind of the right size for everybody to get to know each other well, know each other by name. We don't have precincts here, so we're all housed in our new building that we just moved into earlier this year. And then, so I'm a civilian PIO. I'm not sworn or anything like that. So there's about 3 of us that are not in a union. Everybody else is unionized.
That's always tough when you're the PIO and you're not in those unions. It's tough, but it's the nature of what you do. All right. So since you don't have a law enforcement background, when you first got there, what was something that surprised you about the PIO job?
Yeah. I think coming from a background of being a reporter and then having 2 jobs where I was doing spokesperson work, that wasn't new. But I think what was new for me is the information I was relaying. We deal with life and death situations and we deal with very sensitive information. And so I was used to taking information from higher ups or information we needed to get out and just kind of pushing that information out. But I wasn't used to parsing through it as much as I do now. There are often times when I do interviews or release information where I can't release any more information beyond that point. And I know that's frustrating for community members and for reporters because people want to know what's going on and people do have the right to know what's going on. But investigation standpoint wise, sometimes we can't. And so when I was really new, I would always tell people or my detectives, like, don't tell me anything that you don't want me to relay, because then I don't have to lie by saying I don't know when I actually do know. Obviously, I've gotten more confident and better at doing those interviews, and I don't feel like as scared to know all the information. But that was a big kind of learning curve for me. And for a while when I started, I was admittedly using, like, I'd put notes on my phone and I'd have to use notes when I did interviews, which is just did not look the best, but I had to because I just could not sometimes just couldn't keep all of the information straight that I wanted to get out versus the information that we were not releasing.
Right.
So that was something that I had to get used to being in this role in law enforcement.
Yeah, it is a different experience. And I know every PIOs are always trying to balance the public's need to know the integrity of the investigation, maintaining that credibility for the agency. It's a really kind of an interesting dance that the public and law enforcement don't quite understand what we do when we do it. So it is a difficult battle. I was doing some training last week out east, and one of the PIOs had to leave the training class to go and do speak about an armed robbery at a bank. And he was trying to get information so he could get it out to the public. And it was like, nope, you can't put that out. Nope, you can't put that out. Nope, you can't put that out. I know. And it's like, do you want the public's help or not? So it's always.
Well, and I think.
Go ahead.
I think too, like what you said, there's this learning curve as well with your internal audience, and you have to remember your internal audience too. And I think a lot of people on the law enforcement side have a healthy skepticism of media and putting information out in the trust aspect. And so you have to remember your internal audience too when you're doing these things. And it takes a lot of trust and a lot of relationship building in order to get there, because exactly what you said happens a lot.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. And internal messaging is key. And, a lot of new PIOs, they forget sometimes you got to send out the messaging that you're going to send out to the public before you send it out to them, so that they're not the last ones to know, or they find that out on the news. It's such a, I don't know, it's almost like it's not a betrayal, but it hurts when you don't know about it and everybody else does. And you're the starting agency. Yeah. All right. So when you got there, what social media platforms were you guys running?
So we had a lot. I don't want to say everything because I don't know what encompasses that, but we had Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now X, we had LinkedIn, we had Nextdoor, we had YouTube. So we had a lot of things. And it's been interesting as like the social media manager as part of my job, trying to manage all those different platforms and see where maybe one needs a little bit more love than the others. We really weren't using LinkedIn at all. And so I've been testing that out a little bit to see if posting there, just about what we're doing as an agency, kind of gets people more interested in learning about us and learning about our stories that we tell and how we support all of our staff here. So that's been actually something I've been trying out more, is kind of dabbling into the LinkedIn of it all.
And I know LinkedIn, the nice thing about LinkedIn is it exposes you to people that might be interested in the field, in law enforcement. So it's a good recruitment tool, but it's also just a way to connect with others on a different level. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that want to connect with law enforcement, but they're unsure of how to do it. And LinkedIn's a great way to kind of begin that conversation. Yeah,
totally.
So are you a one-person operation, or is there somebody else in the background?
I am a team of one, a mighty team of one. So I do kind of everything, from top to bottom. And I do have a backup if I do decide to take vacation. And he is one of our deputy chiefs, and he does a really great job. And sometimes actually it comes in handy that we have a uniformed personnel with rank that does the interviews, because it gives a lot of credibility and, as they say in broadcasting, gravitas. So people, really believe and trust what they're saying. But I do also have a counterpart at the city of Lynwood as well. So he doesn't do PD. He does everything but the PD at the city. And he's been a great asset and help. He comes from a background pretty much exclusively in government and higher ed. So he's really used to working in this field. He's got a few years of experience on me as well. So he's a really great partner to use. He's going to be my first call when we have crap hit the fan. He's going to be my first call when I need an extra body to help with logistics, or I just need somebody to monitor social, or I need somebody to go rendezvous with the reporters because I can't split myself into 7 different people.
Right.
So while I don't have technically another person at the PD that's a full-time backup for me, what we do when we do rotations and things like that, he is my other go-to person at the city that helps me out.
Awesome. So when you came into this position, was there somebody else in it, or was this completely new?
Yes. So I will say with a caveat. So there was somebody in the position right before I started. However, she was the first person to have the job. So she was on the job for about 3 years, and she left to go take another PIO job at a law enforcement agency in Colorado. So she had kind of set things up. I got a really awesome MacBook because she fought for getting us on a Mac so we could do editing, because I need to do a lot of video editing on my end. We didn't have some things set up in place, though, when I started, like communications plans, crisis comm plans. We didn't really have a brand or a brand voice. Some relationships weren't fully established. She was really, really strong, I think, in the content creation side. So with my background in marketing, I was kind of able to bring up the marketing side a little bit too, and have that echo the strong content building she had done. And so that was part of what attracted me to this job, is I really wanted to be able to build something kind of from the ground up and be able to be more hands-on with things. And I've been here for a couple years now.
And now, a word from our sponsor. In today's climate, you need to be able to communicate, whether you're communicating to those who serve, your peers, or your constituents. Whether you're looking for professional development or to work with a professional, John Guilfoyle Public Relations has you covered. From crisis communications to website development, visit our website at jgpr.net or call us directly at 617-993-0003 to get started today. We'll help you tell your story strategically. Now let's return back to our episode.
Awesome. So let me you brought this up about branding.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. What was that like? Because obviously every city They have their brand their brand guide that they want to have, but law enforcement's always slightly different because yes, they do have similar colors to the city, but there's always a different. Obviously, the voice is always going to be different, but talk about that.
I think my first initial instinct was, let's align us with the city's brand. We're in the city, we work with the city, that makes total sense. Canva is my best friend as somebody who is not a full-time graphic designer. I use Canva religiously, and Canva has the great thing where you can upload your brand into Canva and just use all your logos, your colors, your fonts, things like that. And so I took on the city's brand in the sense of fonts and colors and logos that we've been using. But to what you said and to your point is we have a different voice than the city does. I think, and I'm still trying to figure that out. I've been through a couple different chiefs now. My last one retired, and my current one has been at the department his entire career, loves this job, but he's about a year in. So trying to figure out our voice and like testing the market a little bit. Do people like a little bit of humor? Do people like hearing about heroic stories? What resonates with people the most? And I've always taken the approach of informative and firm, but friendly, so that we are transparent and relatable. I just posted on Friday this past week a really, really heartwarming story about an officer who we responded to one of the local buses here in town, and I guess this poor gentleman was just very disoriented, didn't know where he was. Turns out he was from a town very, very far away and was trying to make a dentist appointment in a neighboring city up here, but Lynwood and the city he was trying to get to were just not close to each other. And it turns out that this guy had early signs of dementia and was just really lost. So we were able to confirm with this family home that this guy had been missing actually from his home for about 12 hours. And my sergeant, who was on duty that day, said, okay, well, let's reach out and see if we can get this man back to his family in Port Angeles. And but that would require getting him on a ferry. And so the family home was already on their way. They were going to pick him up once they got there, but there was no way to ensure that this poor guy was going to be able to get from even as like I struggle when I go like on places like that, or like in an airport. Think about how disorienting and overwhelming that would be if you just had dementia. And so my sergeant decided to send an officer with him, and our officer actually drove the man to the ferry, paid for this man's ferry with his own money, rode the ferry with the man to his destination, and helped him meet up with the family home at the port on the other side. And so and that did very well because people really like to see this kind of human aspect of law enforcement. And so it's kind of playing with things like that. It's seeing what stories do well, what people resonate with. And I was really happy because that's something we're very proud of, stories like that, and our officers doing good deeds. And it's nice to be able to share something like that with people and that people appreciate it.
Right. It puts the serve and protect 100%. In so many different ways. And it builds that trust bank up for your community when they see that you're doing those kind of things. Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some things you wish you had known prior to taking the job as a PIO?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, I feel like. I think the most important thing for me as a team of one that is on call 24/7, I'm a chronic people pleaser. I admit it. I'm trying to get better at it. I think a lot of us are, and a lot of us are perfectionists and type A people. That's why we got into this job. But it's okay to take time for yourself. And that means not staying attached at the hip with your work phone all the time. I've learned to, if it rises to the level of severity, you can call my personal phone if that's necessary on the weekends or after work. Or not sleeping with my phone in my bed anymore. I did that for about 1.5 years. And I was getting woken up at all times of the night, even if it didn't have to do with our agency. And oftentimes that makes it very challenging to go back to sleep when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and your phone is ringing off the hook. So that would be something that I wish I had known prior to starting, that it's like okay to set boundaries up for yourself when you're not in the office. And as long as you communicate that and you establish a practice of what happens when you're off, and people know that's how they can reach you, then I think that's totally fine and okay. And it's worked very well for me ever since kind of putting that new practice into my life.
Right. And you have to take you have to take some control of it, because if not, the job will just take control of you. You won't sleep well.
Right.
You won't be rested. You just will not be happy, and that just makes things go down the tubes quickly, and that's not a good thing to have.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Next question. What were some of the things that you noticed about the inquiries that you got from the media that shocked you?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So as a former reporter, I have a good idea of what reporters are interested in typically when it comes to law enforcement. I thought I was pretty good at kind of deciphering all of that. But what's been interesting, at least here in the market, is it really depends and it ebbs and flows. We had something happen the first year I was on the job where a truck drove into a CVS, like into the front of a CVS, and smashed the front. The two guys ditched, one ran through the store, another one ran outside the store. Officers arrived on scene and actually were able to make contact with both of them, tackled the one guy. We spiked the car, we deflated the tires, but the car was able to get away. And it happened at 4 a.m. And typically, we have this happen kind of frequently where people try and smash and grab. But I was called for that, and I was at a point where I didn't hear my phone. And I was shocked, and I woke up at 6 o'clock and saw that I had multiple missed messages and that multiple reporters were on scene for it. And I was like, this is so weird. I would have never expected that this would have been interesting. And then we'll have a stabbing in town or a full SWAT deployment, and I won't get called about it. So it's so weird, because I think we're in a bigger market. It depends on what else is going on in the surrounding area. So maybe we have a stabbing, but maybe the stabbing isn't fatal, and maybe there's a fatal stabbing somewhere else in the city. So it really depends, and it ebbs and flows. And that's been so weird for me.
That is. So I've worked in large markets. I've worked in small markets. So that's the one thing I did notice. I was in the number 3 market for a while in a smaller municipality. And let me tell you that you couldn't get anything on the news unless it was, a fatal of some kind, either a homicide or a fatal accident. You'd be lucky if you could get that on the news. But I will say this. I did get the guy the officer that helped the homeless man by giving him his own boots in the middle of the winter. That made national news.
Yeah, because it's a good story.
You just don't know. But I've also worked in municipalities where we're the only agency in the entire area, and the media, they don't call for things that you would think, oh my God, they got to be calling for this. Why are they not calling? Yeah,
it's so
weird. I
know
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Question about how you handle FOIA requests. How do those come into you?
So we have public disclosure requests. That's usually how people in the public or news reporters get information from us. We have an awesome group of people downstairs in our records department that go through all of those. So luckily I do not have to funnel through them and redact things and things like that. It is a clunky process. And I think, I always warn reporters when they ask me hey, can I get video or pictures from this incident? And I'm like, unfortunately, you're going to have to PDR it if you want to do that. And it's a clunky process. It could take a bit. But that's how we do it. I can't send those pictures to people or case reports or anything like that. But I always say whatever, if you put in a PDR request and whatever they can get you, they will get you. And that's usually faster and easier than waiting for me to try and figure something out. So that's how we handle those here.
It's a little slower of a process than is compared to some other states where the laws might be a little different.
I'm not sure about the exactness of the timing. I think they have sometimes within, at least the most recent case we were working on, it was a homicide. They have a certain amount of days. I think like I think it's under 5 days or something to get them the requested material. But our lovely people on records are the ones that do that, and they're like super good at their jobs, and they're used to doing that, and they know what to redact, and they know how to field those questions, and they get them out as soon as they can. But sometimes I just tell reporters, like, it might not make your 2 or 3 o'clock deadline, so just be patient if it doesn't. But we try our best to always get that out as quickly as we can.
Okay, so in regards to like blotter information and news releases, how do you do that?
Yeah, so it depends. Not everything has to be a press release, at least for us, sent out to everybody in our media contacts. There's some things that they want to send out as press releases sometimes, and I have to kind of encourage and guide and say, we can put this on social media. We don't always have to send everything out as a press release. I think oftentimes if you send everything with the same urgency as a press release, when you have something that's really, really big, it's just going to become white noise after a while. And so it depends. Sometimes we send press releases out if it's a big deal, if it rises to that level. If we're actively looking for people, we'll also do that. If we get like a really big bust, we'll sometimes send that out as well. Or if there's been a trend or like a big safety thing we want to remind people of, sometimes we do that. But other than that, we always post on Facebook and Instagram and our X account. Even if we do send a press release, I always triple and double the efforts, because not everybody has email and not everybody has social media. So.
Okay, Maren, so like blotter information that you would send to the media, like the case reports that you guys handle over the week, is there a format that goes out, or is that something they got to come in and look at? How does that happen?
So this was actually something that the previous person started that I kind of took over for, and it kind of lets me flex a little bit of my old reporter skills that I like to do. We do a weekly media recap, and I call it the LPD media blotter. And I take basically the highlighted cases from the past week or past 2 weeks and do a short little rundown of each one. I can pull video from my end on Axon. We use Axon and body-worn cameras, so I can pull that. Or if I happen to be out on the road and get something, I can use that footage. So we try and proactively put out that information. And I always kind of market it and phrase it too with reporters that it's sometimes a really good way. Yes, it's retroactive, but it's a good way to see if you've missed any big cases that you want to look into further. And we do I have gotten some inquiries from that, and I know our community really appreciates, and we put that out as well.
Awesome. Did you take any specialized training once you got hired on at Lynwood?
Yeah, I've been through a handful of FEMA classes, which we know how thrilling those can be. They're great background.
Hey, wait a minute. I teach one of those classes. Now be nice.
Oh my goodness. They're so dry sometimes though, man. They're so dry. But it's good. It's obviously like great information, but I think too, what I've learned from FEMA is that sometimes they're more natural disaster focused, at least out here. So like they focus a lot on OSO and things like that, which I think is great to have that background. But from law enforcement, you also want to be able to have experience in things like, active shooter trainings, major like crisis management. If someone posts something dumb on their personal Facebook page, how do you deal with that? Line of duty death, things that aren't natural disaster-y. So in addition to FEMA, I started doing the FBI leader classes, which have been really helpful. I just finished training a couple weeks ago. So technically I'm a master PIO, which I don't know what that means, but it just means I put in some hours of work in a classroom to get some more information and training. You can't really see it because of the light, but those are two of my certificates up there.
The thing you have to remember about training is it doesn't matter if it's a 40-hour or 16-hour course. If you find something valuable in it once you've taken it and you go, okay, that was worth it, that's all that matters. I mean, every class you're going to take, there's going to be downsides to it, whether it's going to be dry or the instructor maybe not delivering it quite as exuberantly as they should. But there's always something of value in there, and if you can find it, then there's a benefit to it.
Yeah, and I even say sometimes, even if it's to just confirm that you are doing the right thing, which sometimes, like, you don't know. Like, I have all these plans in place, I've run them by peers, but I don't know. I hope I'm doing this right. And sometimes just to confirm that you are doing the right thing, whether it's through a FEMA training or through like an FBI leader class, that's actually very reassuring for me too. So even if it's that bit of information you take out, or like one tidbit, like you said, that you can take home to your agency, for example, in a FEMA class I was doing, I didn't even think about that when we send out our press releases. We we were not at the time actively CCing or sending out that press release to everybody internally. I don't know why. I just never thought about that. But it was going external, but we forgot about our internal audience. And it was just something that we had been doing for a very long time and we didn't think about it. So immediately I came back and like added the the full department to that press release email chain. But that's something very small that I just didn't think about before.
Right. Absolutely. Is there a networking that you do with other PIOs from law enforcement in the area? Do you guys meet like regularly or collaborate on things?
Yes. So as a big region, Snohomish County has a PIO network, and we get together, I think, every quarter-ish. And there's usually a host that hosts it, and there's some sort of either training or presentation or tour that we do, or tabletop. We do a tabletop every year, and that's just nice to be able to see all your PIO buddies and like get eye to eye with people, get contacts, and set up coffee dates from there if you want to, network further. And then my coworker and I over at the city started doing a smaller PIO get together for people specifically in our area. And we kind of set that up because it's the smaller group of PIOs. So if something like a natural disaster was to happen, we have a big fault line that runs right through Lynwood. If that were to happen, who would I call? I'd probably call somebody close by. And so that's been super helpful as well, just kind of networking in our smaller area.
Awesome. What advice would you have for someone who would want to do a similar job like yours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's really agency specific. I always tell people that really want to get into PIO work. And I guess that's true for anywhere. It depends on the company or the job or your manager. But one thing that's been really helpful for me, and something that my chief really believes in, is relationship building. I think that's extremely important. And as my mom always said growing up, people will help the people that they like and that they know very well. Because if you, like you said, you have that bucket of trust, you're more likely to help somebody that you know and that you have a relationship with than someone who's just contacting you out of the blue. That's just, I think, how we are as humans. So I've kind of led my whole PIO practice like that. Building those internal relationships is really, really important. And that's something that I would stress to people trying to get into PIO work. When I was first starting out, I was told, go on ride-alongs, get to know people. And I started to do ride-alongs, and every time I would go downstairs to our squad room, the first question that would come out of their mouths were like, well, what content are you looking for today? And I would always just say, like, I'm here to hang out. Like, I don't have any other agenda. I'm just hanging out for today. I just want to get to know you. I just want to talk. And I did that for probably about 6 months, where I just went out on the road just to get to know people. And funny enough, through one of those conversations, it's a very random tangent, but I was looking for an optometrist because we had just moved to the area. And one of my officers was like, oh, my girlfriend is an optometrist actually at a practice like up the street nearby. And I was like, actually, I've been needing an optometrist. So I literally now go and see his girlfriend for my eyeballs. But I would not have gotten that if I just was, not in the car hanging out. So I think building internal relationships and trust is really important. And it's really crucial when you're trying to lay that foundation in your PIO position.
Absolutely. I agree with that. All right, let's change it up. Let's go to some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Talking or texting?
Talking.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Coffee, tea, or an energy drink?
Coffee.
Adult drink of choice.
I don't drink.
What would be your superpower if you could have one?
I'm so glad you asked. I've been thinking about this for a very long time. The ability to control time.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good one.
Right?
I like that one.
Yeah.
Yep. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Ask for permission.
What place do you most want to travel to?
Right now, probably Japan.
Who would you choose if you could sit down and have coffee with any historical figure, living or dead?
Historical figure. Can I change it to anyone, living or dead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I would probably say my dad's parents. They passed when I was super young, and I don't have a lot of strong memories of them. And it would be really nice to talk to them and let them know like what I'm doing and catch them up on my life.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Maren, what key points would you like listeners to take from the interview today?
This job is fun. It's you get to be creative. You get to do a lot of really cool, fun things. If you're looking to be a PIO, take the leap and try it. There's going to be a great group of PIOs and network that you can rely on in your area, and use those people. Reach out to friends, build those relationships. My coworker and I over at the city, we say we're hashtag PIO buddies. Find your PIO buddy and use them. And yeah, once the job stops becoming fun, then that's your time. But it's a fun, exciting job, and I think if you want to take the leap, you should take the leap.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Let's see. We are hiring, as are many agencies around the country. I think something of note to add is that, and this is actually a conversation I had with one of my officers last week, we are a unique agency. We're not super big, but we're not super, super small. Everybody knows each other, and people here really love the work. We don't have a lot of super jaded officers that are cranky. People really absolutely love the job and love the work. And I think that's kind of rare, which is interesting. But we have a great group of people. My chief is amazing, and it all starts from the top down. Like I said, he runs this department. Like, relationships are very important, and through that foundation, that's how we do everything. And we're going to go out into the community and give an excellent product as our service. So if you want to work for an agency where you have awesome coworkers and we get a lot of good variety of crime here in Lynwood, you're going to be busy, but never anything too crazy. But you're going to be busy. And if you want to come work for an agency, you're going to be busy and have fun and meet new people. This is the place to come.
Awesome. Maren, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect, follow up, or get a job?
Let's see. So we're on all of the social media platforms. Lynwood has 2 N's. So I think people sometimes forget that we have 2 N's in our name. We also are not Lynwood, California. That's something that also people get confused about. But we're on all socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. That's probably the best places to keep up with what we're doing. And I do my weekly Lynnwood Police Department media blotter on YouTube. So you can also subscribe to our YouTube page where you'll find other videos and fun things that we do and kind of behind the scenes of the department.
And I'll add all those into the show notes so people can connect that way.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Maren, thank you very much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much. This is fun.
That's all for this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified on the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please give us a review. Any review is appreciated. To support our efforts with the PIO podcast, you can click on the support button in the show notes, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you.